strength and honor. So in case you can't tell, today's movie commentary is going to be on Gladiator II. Now, Gladiator II is annoying to me because at the end of the day, it's a legacy sequel that should never have been made. It's a sequel to a film that should never really have had a sequel, but also to the story potential of this film. Like, you can do a sequel to Gladiator, even though you really shouldn't. But the thing is that the thing that I found on this rewatch for this film is that the more you watch it, the more you realize that the story on paper that could have been is so much more interesting than the film we get. And bear in mind too, on my previous videos on Gladiator 2, like my trailer reaction and my commentary for the first Gladiator, I was looking forward to Gladiator 2. I wanted to see Paul Mescal in a big historical epic. I wanted it to be good. I had hope for it. Problem is that this film isn't very good. In many ways, it's quite flat and dull and boring. Like, have you guys seen the SNL skit where Paul Mescal is basically in a musical version of Gladiator 2? It's so much more entertaining than this film. Like, if Gladiator 2 had been a musical, it would have been infinitely more entertaining.
They look at me, and all they see is a killing machine.
They look at me, and all they see is a killing machine. But they don't know that far below, I'm so much more than I seem. They call me Gladiator. They call me a slave. They call me a killer. But someday they'll know my name. Like, I'm not even joking when I say that. If Gladiator 2 was a musical, it would have been infinitely more entertaining than the film we got. But before we get further into the video and into the movie commentary, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow me on Instagram and TikTok, other social medias as well. I'm also a filmmaker and actor myself, so check out my latest short film, The Shining Optimism of E.F. Manar. Before we get into the video, I just want to quickly plug my latest short film, The Shining Optimism of E.F. Manar. Keep the spark alive. As dreamer and optimist E.F. Manar must find a way to keep his hopes and passions alive in a cynical world. Inspired by Wonka and The Greatest Showman, a lot of time, effort, love, and passion was put into this project, so I would really appreciate it if you guys could give it a watch. The film is linked down below in the description, and it's also on the homepage of my YouTube channel. I hope you guys watch it and really enjoy it. Anyways, back to the video. And yeah, without further ado, let's get into the commentary for Gladiator 2. Bear in mind, I'm going to be fair with this film, because on this rewatch, there are things where, like, I liked it a tiny bit more than when I did in the cinema, but even still, it's not a good film. So, first positive I'll give the film is that the opening titles are cool. I like that they recapped the first film in the animation style of Ridley Scott's production company logo. Though, a caveat, and put this as like a little pin, is that it feels kind of AI generated. Now, don't take this as me insulting the artists that worked on this title sequence, because, I mean, they did a good job. It's just that the thing I have when watching it is that it feels AI generated. There's something uncanny valley-ish about it. Maybe they did just go frame by frame in the first Gladiator and animate it so well that it looks kind of like live actiony. I don't know, it just feels a little bit off. So this block of text that opens up the film basically dooms the film's story from the get-go. So the dream of Rome is gone despite the ending to the first film, where all of a sudden it seemed like they achieved the dream of Rome. The Senate was going to take over, Lucius and Lucilla was safe, Maximus dies but he goes to Elysium. Like, the ending for the dream of Rome was there, it was set up. What the hell happened in 14 years? Maximus is forgotten. How? What happens in this life echoes throughout eternity. It's not like the film does an interesting thematic theme where it's like, oh no, that idea is wrong and whatever you do in this life does not echo throughout eternity, you will be forgotten and such. No, the film doesn't really talk about it, it just goes, yep, Maximus is forgotten. He's an urban legend in the gladiator community, like, what? Also, how the hell did these two new emperors take power? Like, it doesn't make any sense. The film doesn't explain it. The way the first Gladiator film ends, again, it seems like they're about to achieve the dream of Rome. Rome is to become a republic. But nah, these two dumbass emperors somehow just become emperors. How? Don't look at me, I don't know. Oh, hey, look, it's wheat. Get it? It's because he's Maximus's son. Yeah, the movie's not very subtle about that. Also, I'm pretty sure they revealed that in the trailer. Now, the opening siege to me is very boring to watch. Now, put a little pin in that because I even said in my commentary for the first Gladiator, I didn't love the Battle of Germania stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is like infinitely better than the stuff here, but I still don't really love that opening set piece. Like, it's good, I watch it, it's fine, but I'm not in love with it. This, on the other hand, is that sequence, but worse and more boring. And it's annoying too because one thing that is kind of interesting about this sequence is that Pedro Pascal's character, General Acacius, is basically doing what Maximus did in the first film. However, we're seeing it from the perspective of the barbarians. Like, that's a really interesting flip. Like, again, like I said, the story potential for this film is there on the surface. It's just not really delved into and explored. Like, on paper, the ideas are good and they work. In the film, they don't. I don't know whether to chalk that up to the directing or the writing, but just the overall execution isn't there.
Pray that your God is with you. If he is not, he is no God.
Now, Paul Mescal is Lucius. This is going to be interesting because I think overall Paul Mescal is giving a very good performance with a nothing character. Lucius in this film is a plank of wood. Now, don't let them trick you into thinking that he has some semblance of a personality, because all his personality is stoic, and sometimes he'll say something sarcastic and witty, but I'm a masculine man and I'm stoic and No, Lucius is a plank of wood in this film. And it's really annoying too, because I think Paul Mescal is giving a really good performance with absolutely nothing. Like, any part of me that likes Lucius only likes him because of Paul Mescal. You know, the film talks about this thing that he has this untamable rage and that he's an untamable monster and such, but you don't really see it. Like, yeah, sure, in the Colosseum he'll have moments where he's like cutting off people's heads and such, and he's like, ah! But he doesn't really go into like a berserker rage. You don't see that rage and anger throughout the film, just only in key specific moments. And the annoying thing is that because Lucius is so bland and wooden, I don't care for his journey. I don't care for his story. I don't really care for his character. One thing I will say is that I do like this underworld dream sequence. I don't know. I like the color grading. Paul Mescal is doing a good job acting here. I like it. God, the monkey fight is awful. The visual effects are terrible. Like, how do the tigers in the first film look so much better? Like, in the first film, they're real tigers. They just composited them smartly with visual effects. Here, it's all CGI and it looks terrible. Also, I guess rabies isn't a thing. Like, he bites the monkey and he's completely fine.
Which one is interesting?
Denzel Washington in this film is just playing himself. And don't get me wrong, I am not discrediting the acting prowess of Denzel Washington. It's just that in this film, he doesn't really have a character. His character is just Denzel Washington. Kind of shocking because, you know, Denzel Washington is the guy that always talks about, like, going to the theater and working hard and, you know, finding the character as you're telling the story and such. But in this film, it feels like he's just playing himself. Like, moments like the dap and the fact that he doesn't really change his accent, he's not adopting like a fake British accent or anything. Then again though, it is silly that in most like historical epics, you know, everyone adapts like an English accent even though it takes place in a different country. I find that Les Mis is the biggest defender of that. Like, that's just really funny to me. Like, it's a French story, but everyone in that film is English. Play! Now, speaking of actors that feel out of place, Matt Lucas as the Colosseum commentator announcer, he feels out of place to me, and granted this is more of a personal problem, is that Matt Lucas is kind of in like everything, and because he's in everything, I don't see the character, I see Matt Lucas. And I have a very similar thing with Pedro Pascal in this film. Now, on this rewatch, that feeling has lessened a bit, but at the time of watching this film, Pedro Pascal was everywhere. I was tired of seeing him in like everything. And don't get me wrong, Pedro Pascal is not a bad actor, and nor does he deliver a bad performance in this film. I think he's actually quite good. And the character he plays is essentially just Maximus again. Like, it works for the film's ideas. But yeah, a thing I want to say is that I think I was a little bit harsh on him in my original review. Not that he was delivering a bad performance, but more just so that he is very oversaturated in Hollywood. When you look at the visuals for this film, compare it to the first one, it is so boring. I mean, aside from the fact that the original was shot on film, and I'm not saying that the only way to make a good looking film is to shoot it on film, but like, with digital cinematography, you've kind of got to like emulate the film look, but also too, you've kind of got to like deepen your shadows and like make sure everything looks kind of like relatively good. Add contrast, make sure that your lighting is on point. That's the problem with something about this film, is that the cinematography itself is very messy. And the thing is that the cinematographer came out and said, yeah, Ridley Scott, he didn't really have a visual direction for this. He was kind of just like, we're gonna, you know, run 50 cameras all at once per take, and then, you know, we'll just pick and choose what we want in the edit. And as a filmmaker myself, in my eyes, that just feels like very detrimental. Like, why would you do that? You need to have like a clear like vision and such. Like, I get using multiple cameras for like, you know, performance coverage and such, but like, for like general basic stuff, no. You've also got to make sure that like every angle looks nice. But also too, you know, visually, you look at these establishing shots of Rome, you compare it to the establishing shots in the original, those feel big and grand and epic, there's a beauty to it. This one is like, yeah, it's Rome, I guess. So, the rhino fight in this film is very dumb. I mean, there are two things that I think are dumb about it. One is less significant than the other. The insignificant thing is that Lucius picks up the gravel and, you know, throws it into the air, and all of a sudden, Lucilla has this weird, like, Maximus realization. She was just like, oh my god, it's Maximus, or he's related to Maximus. Like, I'm sure that image might have stirred something in her brain, but, like, the film could have done something very interesting to where, like, Lucius could have wanted to have been a gladiator and kind of embraced that role for the love of the game. I've noticed that in all these big, like, sword and sandal epics, a lot of the time, the character doesn't want to be a gladiator. They're just like, oh, I have to fight for my survival. But what happened to just doing it for the love of the game? Like, where's that story? Where's Proximo's story? I'm not saying that they should make a film about Proximo, but, like, the idea of Proximo, the, you know, slave that fights his way to freedom, wins the love of the crowd. Where is that story? Fuck it, I'm gonna write that story. But the even dumber thing about the rhino situation is that Lucius picks up the gravel, he throws it in the air, creates a dust cloud, and then the rhino still charges into him and hits him because he couldn't see the rhino. Like, that's so dumb. That is... What? It's also at this point too I came to the realization that this film is essentially just a very bland, flat and boring retelling of the first film, which is why they undid all the events of the first film at the beginning of this film. Like, oh, there are two new emperors and the dream of Rome is gone and such. Maximus is forgotten. Like, they undid all of that so they could just retell it in a more boring film.
Lucius is safe.
I promise I'll bring you back as soon as it's safe.
Oh, so Maximus tells Lucilla that Lucius is safe at the end of the first film, but then all of a sudden, oh no, he's not safe and he has to be sent away. So which is it?
I used to be a gladiator myself.
How would you have bested me?
In your current state, I could best you now.
I'll tell you what though, I like Ravi. Ravi's a character, he's a cool presence, and in many ways he's like Lucius's companion, where he's allowed to kind of like break his stoic figure and be a bit more gentle, a bit more warm. I mean, Lucius is still a plank of wood, don't get me wrong, but the addition of Ravi is a nice addition to the film.
Well, let's work it out. He was about 12 when he died?
Okay, so this film basically retcons Lucius's age in the first film, because in the first film, when he meets Maximus, he's 8. There's that scene they share together, and he's just like, oh, how old are you, boy? And he's like, oh, I'm 8. And then Maximus is like, my son is also 8. But in this film, they say that Lucius was 12 when he left, which... that doesn't make any sense because Gladiator, there is no time skip in Gladiator 1. Like, the film ends and Lucius is still 8. Then again, too, this senator guy, he's, like, drunk, so I guess you could say that the numbers are off on purpose, but I don't know, it doesn't feel like it that way.
My lady, we must go at once.
Do you know something I noticed in this film? All Connie Nielsen basically does in this film is cry.
His name was Maximus Decimus Meridius, and I see him in you.
Get out.
Your name was on his lips.
I don't know why this scene feels so melodramatic and it feels like a soap opera. Like, get it? He's Maximus' son. It's very melodramatic, but also too, it's very like he-jangly. Hey, you remember Maximus? You remember Gladiator?
This is about survival!
Do you know what's something? I like Lucius's armor. Like, his armor, his gladiatorial armor is pretty cool. I don't really know why he has to change armor by the end of the film. Now, one of the things about the naval battle in the Colosseum is how are there waves in what is essentially just a pond? Like, there's not a contraption where, like, slaves are, like, you know, rowing something and, like, generating waves. No, there's just waves in a pond. Also, the naval battle, too, is just a bunch of visual noise. Like, there's so much going on in the frame that it's not really interesting to watch because you're just looking at nothing. You're looking at a bunch of mess. I even remember too that when I first saw this film, I zoned out in this sequence because it was just a bunch of visual noise. And that's very rare. If I'm in the cinema to watch a film, I'm locked in. I'm there. I've paid my money. I'm like there. I'm locked in. I'm here to watch entertainment. If I zone out, that's not a good thing. And again, something too, I don't buy Lucius's anger at Acacius. Like, there's just not enough done in this film to make me go, yeah, this guy is an untamable, angry animal. He really wants Acacius dead. Like, he doesn't get the Maximus, you know, husband to a murdered wife, father to a murdered son type of scene. So there's not a lot done with Lucius being angry at Acacius. So it doesn't work for me.
Your name will be forgotten!
Now, the twin emperors are boring villains. That's something this film is severely lacking, which is an interesting villain. These two, they're just boring. Joseph Quinn and the other actor, they do good jobs. Actually, let me find his name. Fred Hetchinger. Like, They both deliver good performances, but at the end of the day, their characters are boring because they're just buffoon. Again, you compare them to Commodus, who is one of the best cinematic villains. They're really lame.
Who is this man? Scratched out.
Maximus.
So Maximus becomes an urban legend in the gladiator community, despite the fact that he was beloved by the people of Rome. He was also a soldier of Rome, and when he dies, Lucilla goes, he was a soldier of Rome. On him. The film doesn't even really explain how, you know, these new emperors try to erase Maximus. Was it even the new emperors? I don't know. Somehow Maximus is just forgotten.
Mrs. Argento, Mrs. Scott.
You know, we didn't need to flash back to the Maximus and Lucius horse scene from the first film. Like, it would have been, you know, nicer if Lucius just walked over to the armor, traced his finger over the horses, and then said their names. One thing that I will give prop to this film is that a lot of the sets are practical, and visually, on paper, they're cool. However, they're let down by the cinematography and the very flat and boring lighting.
May thy knife chip and shatter.
Lucius, wait.
Wait! Wait!
Now, this fight between Acacius and Lucius could have been so thematically rich and so thematically engaging, but because I don't buy Lucius's anger at Acacius, it doesn't work. It feels very flat and hollow. And it's annoying too because on paper, the idea is interesting. Lucius hates Acacius, but they're on the same side. Lucius doesn't know that they're on the same side, so this battle could have been so one-sided and it could have been so interesting to watch. There could have been so much tension in this fight because you, the audience, are going, Lucius, don't kill him, you're on the same side. Even Acacius is saying that. And it would have made the moment too where he decides not to kill Acacius even more powerful because he realizes, oh no, I'm going to set aside my revenge for a better and free Rome.
Is this how Rome treats its heroes?
Is this how Rome treats its heroes? Again, this is also like another dangling thread of like, oh, the people of Rome are, you know, just allowing their values to fall apart and such, but it doesn't really factor into the film. Like, the idea of the people of Rome don't really factor into the film. Like, later on there is a riot, but I don't feel the impact of that riot.
I will never be your instrument in this life or the next.
This is also something really annoying that the film does, which is that they keep repeating lines from the first film as like nostalgia bait, where they go, oh yeah, you've seen Gladiator 1, you remember in this life or the next. I do like Macronus like manipulating the twin emperors so that the crazy one kills his brother. Whilst it is a shame that we lose Joseph Quinn, I do think that it is interesting that we get Fred Hessinger's emperor to be like the main emperor, the kind of like puppet tool for Macronus. Macronus is puppeteering him to do the things that he wants him to do. Okay, here's something though. Did he just kill him with the blunt end of a curved blade? Because most of the time, a curved blade like that is normally single-edged. So they slit his throat with the blunt side.
Strength and honor.
Strength and honor.
The scene between Lucius and Lucilla reconciling, it doesn't work for me. They're kind of just standing around saying things to each other, and it just feels a bit hollow. It's a bunch of wooden lines of thanks and gratitude just being like, oh, thank you for being there for me, and I'm sorry that I abandoned you. And oh look, she gives him Maximus's ring because he's his son.
Dondos! Hail Dondos! Hail Dondos! Hail Dondos?
One thing I will give credit is that I do think Senator Dondos the monkey, it's quite funny.
One or steal, a point is still a point!
What or still a point is still a point. This line is so awkward. Like, I don't know if it's the direction or the line delivery, but it's a weird line. I think it was supposed to sound kind of like intimidating or ironic or something, but like, it doesn't work. I think it is probably down to the direction. Like, if he whispered it in the guy's ear, that would have been cool or interesting, but like, here he just yells it out loud to no one because he's already killed the guy, and it's like, okay. Nice one, Lucius. Did he have to wear Maximus's armor? Like, genuinely, why does he wear Maximus's armor? What is, like, the thematic importance of him wearing Maximus's armor, other than the fact that it was his father's armor? Is it because, oh, we're trying to make Lucius Maximus, but it feels very forced. Like, the way the film makes it play out, it doesn't seem like Lucius has, like, daddy issues, so there's no real, like, thematic importance. Maybe it's something to do with the fact that, like, oh, yeah, he's getting to dress up as his hero Maximus the Savior or whatever, but I don't buy it. It just feels like forced cringe nostalgia bait.
I'm not a general, but we are all soldiers.
This speech is so bland. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm all for big epic war speeches. That's kind of like my thing. I love them. Aragorn's speech in Return of the King, Timothy Chalamet's speech in The King.
You expect of me a speech? I've only one to give.
Timothy Chalamet's speech in Dune Part 2. I love me a big epic war speech, but there's something about this one where it's so blandly written, it's so wooden, it's so stilted, it doesn't work. And don't get me wrong, Paul Mescal is trying his absolute fucking best to make this work.
There once was a time when honor meant something in Rome. I no longer believe that exists. We must find it.
He's doing all the acting shit. He's, you know, changing his tone of his voice, going up and down, but he's doing like pregnant pauses and, you know, elongating words and such. That is the sign of a good actor trying to work with something, but there's nothing. Like in a better film with a better speech when he's all like, by my sword, strength and honor. That would have been great. I would have loved that.
By my sword.
Strength and honor.
But no, it comes across as a bit like stilted and wooden when he's all like, strength and honor.
Strength and honor.
For some reason, his like lip curls, like why does he deliver it like that?
Strength and honor.
Go, my son, Lucius.
So she just got shot in the chest. How does she say "go my son" with absolute clarity? She'd be like, "Go my son." The final fight between Lucius and Macronus is just very silly. Like, how is this 28-year-old man losing to this 60-year-old man? Like, as proven by the Jake Paul and Mike Tyson fight. It's not possible. Like, even down to Macronus getting his hand chopped off. Like, Denzel's reaction doesn't feel realistic. It feels kind of like a vanity thing of like, oh, I don't want to scream out loud, so I'm just gonna be like, Like, maybe you could attribute that to shock, but also, too, you would be, like, screaming in pain at the same time. I don't know. There's something about it that feels unrealistic. Or at least untangible. Like, not everything has to be realistic, but you have to buy into the circumstances. And the final speech Lucius gives is kind of annoying because, again, it is the writers going, hey, we're gonna reference everything from Gladiator. You know, Marcus Aurelius' dream of a new Rome, and my father, Maximus Decimus Meridius. It's like, I get it. I'm here to watch Gladiator 2. Stop reminding me of Gladiator 1. And speaking of reminding me of Gladiator 1, the ending moment is so cringy. Like, he goes into the Colosseum, touches the gravel, and is all like, talk to me, father. And then we literally end on the wheat shot from Gladiator 1. Like, what are we doing here? Like, seriously. I mean, not only is that the best shot of the film because it's the shot from the first Gladiator, it's the most iconic shot from the first Gladiator, but also, too, why do we have to remind the audience of the first Gladiator? We've literally paid here to sit here and watch the sequel to Gladiator, but all this film is obsessed with doing is referencing the first one. Like, even down to using the same track of Now We Are Free, like, it's just... And speaking of the musical score, because I guess we're on it now, Harry Gregson Williams' score for this film is very underwhelming, which is really disappointing because I love his music normally. His Kingdom of Heaven score, his Narnia theme, they are incredible. And obviously Hans Zimmer couldn't return because he was busy doing Doom Part 2, so like, I get why he couldn't return, but there's something about Harry Gregson Williams' score in this that is really flat and unoriginal and boring. It just feels like the film, which is really annoying because I know he's a fantastic composer. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Gladiator 2. It's kind of it. It's a flat, boring, dull movie that shouldn't have existed, and on paper, the story for this film is interesting. However, the way it's executed is just not interesting. So in many ways, this film will be forgotten. But let me know what you guys thought of Gladiator 2 in the comments down below. If you liked it, I'd be curious to know if you did and why you did. Because don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that my opinion is fact. Like, you can like whatever you like. But I do feel like you should be able to at least acknowledge the criticisms of something that you like. But yeah, that's all I've got for you today. Like, comment, subscribe, follow me on social media, all that stuff. It's all linked down in the description. And until we meet again, see you guys next time. Strength and honor!